time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. A good moment, everyone. Without any further ado, before we take even one more breath, we do want to acknowledge our new sponsors. We should have done that at the head of the show, but because they are brand new sponsors, we never remember to do that.
No, I like it. Fold it in.
You do want to fold it in?
Yeah.
Does it feel a little bit more of a flowy segue thing for you, right?
That's right.
You're nodding. So again, this program is made possible with support from Events USA and Hierophant Publishing, producers of books and events for body and mind and spirit. And now, without further ado, Freeman, it's good to see you. Welcome back. You've been
I'm back.
You've been back from adventures abroad, Freeman. For those of you who were not tuned in last time when I spoke about this, when Sandy was sitting in for Freeman, has been away leading the Mexican financial industry to health and wellness.
That's what we were doing.
It's good to have you back. So yeah, for all that health and wellness, he came back and
I was sick as a dog.
He went from health and wellness to laid up on his back.
It was brutal.
A lot of fluids going inbound and outbound.
I haven't been that sick. I don't even know when. I mean, it really was crazy. But it was interesting because it was such a high. We really had an amazing impact. The training team, which I was part of, 2 men, 2 women. We were doing a women in leadership training with Banamex, largest bank in Mexico. And it was high. And then I came home and I was just sick.
What did you get out of the sickness?
That's a crazy question. What did I get out of the sickness?
Well, you at least...
No, I did. I'm actually glad you set it up that way because, there's something about being sick that, for me, there's a vulnerability and a kind of humility.
Yeah.
Gratitude, I think, is what I got because there's something about being sick and just feeling a little better, right?
Yeah.
Become so grateful. And again, even the... humility.
Was Jasmine adequately Florence Nightingaling? Did she nurse you, or did she horsewhip? Did she horsewhip you?
No, she was fine.
Get up.
Yeah, I think a combination of both. I mean, she was really ready for me to get back in and help with the kids.
Take up your bed and walk.
Yeah, well, she had just handled all of the kid duties, which I handle. What's beautiful about that, by the way, is that every time I come home, my wife is so grateful for all the work I do. Because when I'm there, she just doesn't notice.
She has relative deprivation.
Totally. She doesn't notice that I do it.
So this thing about taking the hits of life as gifts, around sickness as well. There's so much controversy swirling around sickness, around how about this measles and rubella.
Well, the vaccination.
The vaccination was it called MMR, I think, measles, mumps, and rubella.
Yeah.
I don't know how I knew that.
Measles, mumps, and rubella.
To me, measles, mumps, and rubella are 3 dogs that live near mine. But such a controversy going around that, and so tricky to navigate it because, like everything else in our country, it becomes political in about 2 seconds. You look away, you look back, and it's a political issue. Where do your rights begin and my rights end, and the overlap of that, and some surprising advocates taking positions you would never expect. Rand Paul coming down on people. Ought to have the right to make their own decisions around this. And then Marianne Williamson, I see our friend Marianne on Bill Maher the other night saying, no, absolutely, I mean, we should jab everyone. Just get him in there, roll up his sleeve, and give him a jab. So it's weird, but fortunately, we have with us our really dear friend. I'm thrilled to say that Lynne McTaggart is with us, and I bet she's got something to add on this point. For those of you who don't know, then I'm sorry for you. You're sleeping under a rock. But Lynne is a best-selling author and researcher and lecturer whose work has been described as a bridge between science and spirituality. I guess that's as good a description as any. She's the author of 6 books, including the bestsellers The Intention Experiment, The Field and the Bond. She edits the monthly health journal What Doctors Don't Tell You with our dear friend Brian Hubbard, her husband. And we are so thrilled to have you with us. How are you, Lynn?
Welcome back.
I am great, Barnett. How are you?
Yeah.
I'm just thrilled to be back with you guys.
Yeah, well, we're not coughing, we're not wheezing, we're not dripping, we're fine. We have no bumps or lumps. We have nothing going on. But what do you think of this whole kind of jab 'em or leave 'em?
I couldn't be more opposed to that attitude because I've been studying vaccination for 25 years. And the real point about vaccination is not that it doesn't work ever. It's that it works really imperfectly. Mm-hmm. And that there are, in many cases, totally unacceptable side effects. And the other thing about vaccination that's really important to understand is that the government and all of the bodies that are charged with protecting the public's health lie on this issue. There is so much dirty laundry around vaccination that is being massaged away, covered up, and all sorts of things. And while it's a wonderful idea in theory that we can immunize everybody and that children and adults won't get certain diseases, the reality is so far away from that. And there are so many hundreds of thousands of children that have been irreparably damaged from vaccination. So there's so much that needs to come out on this issue, and to me, it's a human rights issue.
Wow. There's sort of several threads. I'm kind of scratching my head as to which to follow, but one of them, I think, is sort of a fundamental meddle as little as possible way of approaching things. I mean, my sense, and I don't know, I kind of think we talked about this last time you were here, is really looking to nature and its own perfection rather than wanting to manipulate, control, and so forth with nature. Is that your thinking as a sort of bottom line?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I think you have to really apply a common sense rule to this too, which is I think that children now get something like 27, or in the U.S. it's over 30 antigens. These are little kids whose immune systems are immature, and they are exposed to something like 30 antigens, weakened diseases in a very short span of time. Now, what does that say to us common sense-wise? Probably this immune system isn't mature enough to cope with this, and that's exactly right. And the other thing is you have to look at the components of the vaccines. Some of them are being, there's different DNA in them and all kinds of things that are damaging children. So from my perspective, yes, I always take a holistic point of view. I think the body is such an amazing holistic mechanism, something we don't really even completely understand. And I think we mess with it to our peril. And finally, there are many, many other ways of creating health than trying to use chemical manipulation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, we have now this measles outbreak. Measles that we thought we were wiped out, or in this country, we thought as far back as 2000. But lo and behold, measles, and a measles outbreak that began at Disneyland, where else? Has spread. I think there's like over 100 cases now in 15 states, and and people are very heated up over the issue.
I think it broke out. It's a small world. Because that's the metaphor, right?
You didn't think it was bear country, right?
Well, it could have been the Magic Kingdom too. I don't know, but it's a small world. I think is where it all occurred. Yeah.
So, that should be the least of the cultural influence that the Magic Kingdom has across the land, but it's degenerated not only into. You can look at it as I said before, as a political issue, as a health issue. It's also clearly a consciousness, spirituality, and consciousness issue. There are approaches to these kinds of challenges we're obviously not going to meet the challenge of this on the same terms that it's presented itself. I think, was it Einstein said that there are no solutions at the same level as the problem? Yet we continue to hear this controversy is framed in terms of doing battle. The same way we talk about all of our other challenges. Let's obliterate it. Let's crush it. Let's overwhelm it. Let's dominate it. Let's control it. And that's simply not going to be effective. The flames tampen, and then they roar up someplace else. Around this issue, as in every issue that we try to deny and suppress, it comes up someplace else. So as you point out, this is a holistic, this is an opportunity to begin to more deeply investigate the holistic nature of our relationships to the world and to each other. There are different ways to respond to this challenge. We're not going to be able to do it by trying to dominate. How do you see that? How do you see that beginning to take root?
Well, first of all, let me just ask some basic questions. That people are getting hysterical because there have been 100 cases of measles. Number one, has anyone actually died? And number two, has anyone actually died? And if so, who are they? Because there is a demonizing that's going on about measles.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm old enough, and I assume you are too, where we did not get vaccinated against measles.
No, I just got to stay home in bed and watch black and white television for a week.
Measles is not a killer disease in the
I had mumps too.
It's not a killer disease in the well-nourished. Mm-hmm. Measles, it only becomes a killer in children who are very malnourished, but as soon as you give them vitamin A, they stop dying of measles. Mm-hmm. So measles has been demonized, and as a result, there's been the pushing of the vaccine. And also as a result, if there is an outbreak, people get hysterical. There are always outbreaks of measles among the highly vaccinated, because the vaccine is not perfect. It doesn't work all the time. And I've observed over the years that there have been more and more outbreaks here and there among the vaccinated, as I say, every so often. And, as the great late Robert Mendelsohn, Dr. Robert Mendelsohn once said, author of Confessions of a Medical Heretic, diseases are like fashion. They come and go. And a lot of times you see this among vaccinatable diseases, diseases that are vaccinated against, you see them coming back in waves. So I think that there's a lot of questions to ask. It's being blamed, this outbreak, on the unvaccinated. If it's like the outbreak that occurred in the UK last year, mm-hmm. It occurred largely among the vaccinated. So the vaccine doesn't always work. So that was one thing to be kept in mind. And another thing to be kept in mind is the persistent lies going on by the government in the U.S. about the MMR vaccine, the Centers for Disease Control. Persistently buries and massages data about the safety of that vaccine, which they did just recently.
I think looking at this holistically, just the resistance to messiness, the resistance to complexity, and the addiction, if you will, to a kind of certainty, a kind of rightness. Because I'm thrilled that you're illustrating, what's going on underneath the surface. But I want to dig even deeper and just look at the theme, if you will, of how quickly we become polarized. And I'm going to call it an addiction because that's how I view it. It's like jumping on whatever the current trend is, and then the screeching of everyone taking their positions. And this, to me, because look, life is complex, and the wisdom and the thoughtfulness to be able to handle complexity in a measured way feels lost. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the vaccination at all cost mindset is a brilliant example of trying to flatten out a complex thing like human health, and trying to create a one-size-fits-all approach. And that, in a neat little nutshell, is exactly the problem and the difference between conventional medicine's approach to illness and holistic medicine's approach to illness. Because conventional medicine is saying, essentially, there's a one-size-fits-all approach. Everybody can take this drug, and they'll get better. Whereas the alternative approach is very much, well, your body is unique, and you need a unique solution. And so we need to look at your body, mind, and spirit and come up with an appropriate holistic medicine for you and you alone.
That's messy business. That's going to involve complexity. That's what we don't like that. Listen, we need to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to dive into this more, and I want to dive more into, it feels to me like I don't know if you remember that movie Pleasantville, but are we trying to achieve Pleasantville, or can we live in a world that's more complex and, from my perspective, more rich and diverse and more interesting? But we're
going to be right back
to the break.
After this break, Freeman's going to get a flu shot. We'll be right back.
That's it. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Yeah, this is Barnet. I'm here with Freeman and our guest, Lynne McTaggart. So before we broke off, you trotted out Pleasantville, a pleasant movie and a very interesting allegory for what?
Well, the idea that we're dumbing everything down to one size fits all, and that we've got this idealized way, and life is complex and it's messy, and there's a point of maturity, at least from my perspective, where we welcome in the messiness and have the maturity to handle it.
Yeah.
That was a statement, not a question. I just, that was my take.
One of the ways that we defend against having you're referring to it as maturity, having the presence to be able to be with what comes up, the sense of uncertainty, the sense of chaos, the sense of vulnerability. We are uncertain, and it is inherently chaotic and uncertain. That is the way life is, but we guard against it by creating righteous behavior, which, if you're of a biblical persuasion, is a noble attribute for others. It is a clinging to being right.
Yes.
And that demands absolutes and guarantees and insurances and vilification and scapegoats. And so you have Jenny McCarthy, who is now the most vile woman on the planet because she spoke out. She spoke a unpopular point of view. Unpopular if you're the Center for Disease Control, or if you are an opponent of what doctors don't tell you. So I'm very interested, Lynn, in an update. Last time you were on the program, you had some of the more institutional forces in the UK rolling out the big guns on your publication, and you prevailed.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening with that?
Well, the battle goes on in the sense that this pharmaceutically sponsored organization and has continued letter writing campaigns. And what happened?
Are they good writers at least?
Sorry, no, not even good writers. No, they have set up since we started as a magazine in 2012, we've had opposition by basically paid lobby groups who have contacted our distributor, contacted the stores who stock us, objected to the magazine, asked for it to be banned, got trolls to crawl all over our Facebook pages, placed a phony story in the London Times, which was, as Lillian Hellman was said about her by Mary McCarthy. Everything she writes is a lie, including and the. That was this article, and so on. And so this started going on and on and on. And I realized that the most important thing, we couldn't get any corrections in the Times, and we realized soon enough that our only mode of response was to use our social media, which we did, and it was an amazingly effective way of fighting back. And what we started to do was basically take the fight to the opposition and essentially expose what bad journalism the Times had done in doing that article. We've been exposing the links between the pharmaceutical industry and these people who are attacking us. And ultimately, there was such a huge outcry with one of the stores that had banned us as a result of this phony campaign.
Big store, right? Can you say how big? Are you able to say which store?
Yeah, it was Tesco. We're put back in. Yes, absolutely. Now we're out of one other store, which again was due to this phony campaign. Mm-hmm. But we are circulating through all sorts of other means. We're circulating through alternative practitioners, and so every time we get attacked, our circulation is going up. So it's actually working in a weird, strange way in our favor, because people are now polarizing around free speech. And of course, this is an extremely relevant topic at the moment, right after the shootings in Paris. Yes. The attempt to ban our magazine is being compared to that. So
I think it's timely in the light of this conversation we're having about the plague of measles. That what doctors don't tell you is an idea whose time has really come, to have a magazine that speaks very frankly about the research and some of the underexpressed realities of medicine and of wellness. It shouldn't be a radical idea. But a mainstream magazine of that nature is still a subversive idea.
Can I add something here? It's interesting because maybe this is similar. The gay marriage issue in Southern California, the No on 8, right? Mm-hmm. There was a huge sort of uproar and backlash. And in the moment it was happening, this is only a few years ago, yeah. I was saying to myself, this can't be happening in whatever year it was, 2009 or something. I just can't imagine that there's this kind of ignorance at this moment in time. What followed, which was fascinating, was the pendulum swung the other way. So it was sort of the breakdown elements. Yeah. And I think wellness and the holistic approach is so common. I'm not diminishing the fight and what you've gone through, Lynn. I totally get it. But I'm just offering that my sense is that this is the sort of beginning of the breaking, because it's so flawed, the mindset of that sort of,
command and control medicine.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that it isn't. It isn't strange. It's just the problem that you're dealing with, and it's not kooky. It's not out there. I mean, look at the giant business that alternative medicine now is.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Whole Foods. It's a huge, huge business, and then you start looking at all of the vitamin companies and what kind of business that is. I mean, over here in the UK, it's something like it's $1 billion business. So, and in the US, it's got to be much more. But the issue isn't that. The issue is what's going on in the corporately led media now, and what is the conversation. I've been running What Doctors Don't Tell You as a journal for 25 years, and only as a magazine in the last 2. And in all of that time, I've seen this amazing shift in how the media portrays alternative medicine. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were heroes in the media. I mean, there was much more open debate about alternative medicine and much more controversy around conventional medicine was allowed. And, you know, it was allowed to speak and to criticize conventional medicine. And now there's far less of that. There's far more deliberate placing of stories that is by these, you know, corporate monoliths that probably have ties to vaccine companies, to pharmaceutical companies, to GMO, all of that stuff. So it's reflected in the media we now read. So I think that's really the issue, more than public acceptance, because there's huge public acceptance here. I think that the current statistics here in the UK, where I live, is that 3/4 of all people have gone to an alternative practitioner at least once. 3/4. You know, and we have more people paying visits to alternative practitioners than visits being paid to their general practitioners, their conventional doctors.
And of course, the health structures, the health monolith, is not sustainable. It cannot. There's no way that it can support itself. It's going to come unraveled of its own, under the weight of its own,
absolutely,
of its own size, and it all kind of reminds me a lot, of what happened some years back around the tobacco wars, when the cigarette companies were putting in tremendous resources into perpetuating the myth that there was no adverse health relationship to consequences to smoking, and many outright lies, and all kinds of governmental lobbying and lying before Congress, and eventually that whole house of cards came tumbling down. And I think that we're looking at that happening right now when it comes to how we do health and how we do well-being, what we hold to be health. What is it that we consider? What do we consider healthy lives? What do you consider how would you the hallmarks of healthy living?
Well, I think it is that whole thing of a four-tiered life, and by that I mean, first of all, healthy diet and exercise program with healthy supplements. And these days, it's without a doubt we have to take supplements. Food isn't what it once was. I mean, there's just no question about it. So a program that's tailored for you that works, number one. Number two, work that you really love, because health, as we define it, isn't just about what the body does. Health is so entwined with how we feel emotionally, how we feel spiritually, etc., that if we don't have a healthy emotional life, that will show up in the body. So doing work we love, having a tribe of people we love, and a significant relationship or relationships, that is as important as eating the right stuff. You know, it's been shown over and over again, even when people eat junk. There's a wonderful study of the Japanese showing that when Japanese people transplanted to the U.S., some got heart disease, some didn't. It didn't matter what they ate. What mattered, the only thing that mattered, was whether or not they created close community ties. So having your tribe is another really, really important thing. And having a spiritual connection, a bigger connection, and a constant state of curiosity, those seem to all be measures of a long and healthy life. And exercise isn't something to be sneered at. I mean, all of the studies over and over again that we see, simple walking, even simple walking, but every day getting at least 20, 25 minutes of something in there. It doesn't have to be huge power, high-intensity stuff, but just moving your body every day is really important.
I want to add one, and I want to go back to the beginning of the show, and it's okay sometimes we get sick. It's a part of life. I think one of the things that the Western medicine world really has got us all hooked on is quick fixes. And my week of being sick was a gift, you know, what Barnett said at the very beginning, that what's the gift in it? I slowed down and there was a gratitude, and even the trees got a little brighter. It was really okay for me to be sick. And I feel like that's a thread, that we're so intolerant of discomfort. And again, if we're going to be more mature and handle more complexity, then life gets messy and you will spend time being sick. It's okay for a kid to get the chickenpox and be home for a week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, all of these diseases that make us strong, because that's the other thing too. An immune system is like a muscle, and previous generations understood that. They understood that when you got through a case of measles, that child was all the stronger for it.
Yes.
Children playing with dirt and getting a little ill, they were all the stronger for it.
These were spiritual crises, small and large.
Yeah, you're all the stronger for it. Mm-hmm. So illness is an important part of it. And it's really important to stop demonizing these ordinary types of illnesses that are part of childhood, and to really look at the statistics also. And of course, it's important to see how really useful vaccination is. And if you look at the stats, you'll see that most of these illnesses were largely conquered by sanitation rather than the vaccines themselves, mm-hmm. Which tend to take credit for better nutrition and hygiene.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Washing hands is quite good.
Washing hands is good.
Washing hands is really quite good. So I want to just steer this over 2 or 3 clicks. You mentioned exercise, and there are obviously many benefits, too many to cite here. But one of them is through exercise, we begin to develop a relationship with the body, with our meat, with our substance, with our own aliveness, and even a sense of what in the Eastern traditions is called chi, or energy, and what some may say, probably you included, that there is there's an energy soup of which we are a part and of which we are made, and that it is that energy soup that we can begin to have a relationship with when we come into the body. So we have a relationship with the aliveness of which we're made, and also of that which bonds us to everyone and everything else. Is that does that accurately dovetail into your research?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the real key element, and you can see it in what it makes for health, is to understand that we are part of something much larger, and that is one of the reasons for disease. One of the serious reasons for disease is a sense of isolation, which is so cultivated in our modern society, because we are told to be independent. We're told to be competitively individual. We're positively encouraged to do that. But we see that nature has actually designed us to be connected. Mm. In every way, we're healthier when we're connected. We're part of a group. And so feeling that we are part of this holistic, intergalactic superorganism is health-giving.
And we already are, aren't we? I mean, it's not a matter of connecting up to it as much as it is a recognition that we are already knitted into the fabric of the whole, and awakening to that, and therein lies many healthful benefits and many wonders. I mean, you in your work in the intention experiment, for example, is one very dramatic, which I'm going to ask you to comment on, one very, very dramatic snapshot of some of the capabilities and the capacities that we have as human beings that arise out of the knowing that we are all connected in this soup of aliveness.
Well, I find it in my work on the intention experiment. That's where I'm really finding the biggest example of the incredible power of connectedness, because I do this ongoing experiment I've been carrying out since 2007, testing the power of group thought to affect the physical world. And so I've been working with scientists and having them set up some sort of experiment in their lab. And their lab is, I've been working with scientists around the world, so there are various places. I mean, one of the early ones was University of Arizona. I've worked on a lot of experiments with Dr. Gary Schwartz. So he would set up something, let's say an experiment with 4 sets of seeds. I would ask my internet community to select one of the 4 sets of seeds, and they would only see a photo. So that's really important. They would just see this photo of a little tray of seeds. They would select tray A, B, C, or D. We'd put that up. They would send intention to make those seeds grow faster over 10 minutes. The scientists wouldn't know which ones we selected. They would plant all 4 sets of seeds and then measure them 5 days later. Now, we ran this experiment 12 times. 6 of those were control experiments, and 6 where we actually selected something, an intention target. And every single time we did, the intention seeds grew significantly higher than the controls. In one case, twice as high. And so what is that? I mean, when you sit back and try to unpick exactly what happened there, first of all, you're creating some sort of psychic internet, because we're not actually even sending intention to the target. We're sending intention to a photographic representation of the target. People are dotted all around the world, and yet they're somehow able to focus in on that little tray of seeds sitting there in Tucson, Arizona. And people coming together as a group are creating some sort of psychic internet. I mean, you're having a real live demonstration of quantum non-locality, the idea that, we affect things at a distance, the spooky action at a distance. So all sorts of things demonstrate our connectedness, but as I say, I see this periodically, and it blows my whole worldview to smithereens every time I do.
I love that. We're wrapping up. So here's how I'm going to sort of surmise all this. What I sense is that the work or the power of the collective intentionality, the commonality, and being able to hold the commonality that can include all of our individualness, right? Because that seems to me, if I sort of try to tie the entire conversation today together, how do we hold it with in a generous enough field so that all of these little bits, these little struggling particles, can find a constructive harmony, right? In some bigger way of holding it. That seems to me, Lynn, to be the place that your work, and frankly, I'll throw Barnet and I's work around consciousness, is all about. How do we take all these struggles and the messiness and create a big enough conversation and context so it can organize more constructively?
Well, I've been working with that a lot, and look at like the work of Orland Bishop, who is teaching rival gang members how to speak to each other and how to relate to each other. I mean, talk in Watts, California, talk about a fool's errand. But he's succeeding because of what he's doing, which is one thing very simple: the power of deep sharing. I mean, what Orland does is he explains to these tough young men who've been so damaged by their experience, be vulnerable. Tell them why you believe what you believe. And that is probably the most powerful and disarming mechanism for connecting with the so-called other side.
I love it. Hello, Lynn, thank you. There's like, the challenge every time we talk to you is you open up Pandora's box and there's like a million threads we want to follow, but of course we're limited by time.
And you, of course, have the Orient Express to catch.
Yes.
Marrakesh is Express.
Oh, Marrakesh Express. Well, it's a little closer, and but it's going to be as much fun. So we thank you for joining us today. We're sending you off to your holiday.
And the website. We'd love to give folks the website you'd like to send them to for intention experiment number, whatever number
and
it is you're doing, or what doctors don't tell you. Please let folks know where they can find.
Okay. For my mothership website, they can go to lynnmctaggart.com, and it's an E on the end of Lynn, and McTaggart is ART.com. Sign up, and you'll find out more information about our next intention experiment. Mm-hmm. And for What Doctors Don't Tell You, it's WDDTY for What Doctors Don't Tell You, WDDTY.com.
Fantastic. Lynn, thank you so much. It was awesome having you. Always awesome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Bye.
For those of you listening, we're going to take a quick break, so stay with us. We'll be right back after this break to wrap things up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain.
It's always thrilling to me when I speak to Lynn, because I always feel like we are on a roller coaster. There's so much that is exciting and new and provocative.
She's got a big brain, that woman.
She does. Actually, she has a wheelbarrow, and she carries it. She carries it around in a wheelbarrow. She's got two. She has a big one for her brain, and she has a really big one because she has a heart that's even bigger than her brain.
Yeah.
So Brian,
her husband,
always has a lot of luggage to carry around. She is so wonderful. I love her.
Those two seem to do really well together. So.
They're fabulous people.
It's a good pair. We love having her. I mean, there's so many things about that conversation. The allowing things to get messy, looking at things in a complex way, to really personalize it. For me, I've held the world in more narrow stories, more tight boxes than I'm proud to admit. And what's happened over the last 5 years of my life is I'm less certain. The boxes are less tightly held. And what that's done for me is I'm not pursuing stories that are like prefabricated. I'm not pursuing outcomes, and I'm more open to things playing out. But in order to do that, I have to allow for messiness, and it is disorganizing. It does throw me off sometimes, but I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful for being sick, not looking to get sick again, but I'm okay with it. And, you know, life can be more messy. We don't need to. I'm not pursuing Pleasantville in my own personal life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, life is messy. It's just very challenging to handle life, to handle the chaos of life. I mean, life is either beautifully chaotic, if we have some wisdom, or it's frighteningly chaotic. Right. So I do have some compassion, both for myself when I dig in.
When you get reactive.
When I get reactive, or when something happens that reminds me, whether I'm aware of it or not, but that feels like an old behavior or an old hurt or something familiar that is frightening or causes me to tense up or to stop breathing or to imagine the worst or to get pessimistic or to be dispirited or to become reactive or to lash out or to shrink or to split off or to go numb. Or there's a whole menu of what it is to be human. And so the chaos of life is quite frightening until we begin to understand why we have these responses and where we go, why we have these fears and how they have come to live in us and how have come to take such deep root in us, and to allow life to be complex and chaotic without having some intimacy and some ability to respond to the root of those fears is a recipe for the kind of mayhem that we see all around us. We crave certainty. We want absolutes. We want to go fundamental. We want to be loved, and we want to be connected. We want to belong, and we want to stand for something, and we want to have passion and meaning in our lives. Well, it sounds like ISIL to me. So you either do it by becoming a psychotic fundamentalist. You certainly have passion. You certainly have a reason to live. You're certainly answering to a perverted version of a higher power. You're certainly doing God's work. You certainly belong in a family. You certainly know how to party if you got your Kalashnikov out and you're shooting in the air all night. And it's psychotic, but it is a response, a spiritual response to a chaotic life. So we can't simply buckle down and put on a smile and learn to ride the a level 7 white water rapids until we are schooled enough and trained enough to be able to handle white water rapids, and then the chaos is fun.
It's interesting because we always embrace paradox around here, and the complexity set against some simplicity, not simple-minded, but because this is deep stuff. But when Lynne was talking about the study in Japan where what people ate was sort of forgiven, if you will, life kind of forgave it when they felt connected to a community and loved and seen and heard.
Yeah,
I don't think,
and they smoke like crazy there too. And, you know, we smoke. We don't. Nobody smokes in this country, but nobody actually speaks to each other either because we're buried in our devices. If engagement in meaningful connections, satisfying work, and meaningful relationships trumps the tobacco business. I don't know. I'm not going to cite stats because I don't know them.
That's it. The idea that look, we in sort of one breath can say it's so complex and there's so much to sort through, and if we can come back to love, if we come back to the grounding of feeling connected to a sense of purpose and community, not in that psychotic kind of we want to be right righteousness way, in a more inclusive, open way, then life is quite forgiving. I mean, that's the magic of the whole thing.
So I got to tell you my life forgiving story.
Can you do it in 1 minute?
I'm going to do it in 1 minute. So a lot of years ago, I decide somebody. I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I went out on a vision quest. A vision quest.
Oh, I know this story.
I wasn't like suddenly I'm Native American, right? So I go out to Death Valley and I have 4 gallons of water and a ground sheet and a sleeping bag, and I start to put in my ground sheet, and I tie it up to a little piece of sagebrush, and I know I'm doing a lame job. I know it, but I'm cutting corners, and I think it's good enough. And all of a sudden, it starts to blow, and there's drops of rain. So I get under, and my thing's flapping, and I realize this is going to blow away, and then I'm going to have a real problem. It's going to be dark soon. I'm going to get wet. I'm going to get cold. I'm going to have a real problem. So I think I better go out, and I really better put some attention to this. And I take it down, and I strike it, and I start over, and I craft it beautifully, and I tie it down, and it's tight, and it's anchored, and it's taut, and it's really beautiful, and I'm proud of it. And I keep looking up, and the thunderheads are gathering, and the wind is blowing, and everything is trembling with life, and it's like just about to explode with weather. But I'm not quite finished, and it feels to me like the entire of creation is waiting on me because I am at work with clear intent and with passionate intent for a good purpose, and it's real, and I am focused, and I don't have any kind of prevarication about it. I'm totally aligned on this. And so the whole of creation is in alignment with me. And I finish, and I stand back, and I look at it, and I'm proud of it. And it is work. It is a work of beauty. I feel so good about it. And in that moment, the sky cracks, and there's a bolt of lightning. It's almost biblical. And the whole sky opens up, and torrents come down, and I crawl into my shelter. And
that's the metaphor.
The takeaway is, as you do one thing, the whole of reality meets you in the spirit of how you approach it.
Beautiful. And we approached this show with vigor and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Enjoyed having Lynne.
I enjoyed having you back in your seat.
Good to be here. And we invite you all to keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness.
The last thing we want to say is, again, to thank Events USA and Hierophant Publishing, without whom this show would be less than it is now. Thank you all for coming.